So let's do early power rankings for the 2025-2026 NHL season. So you got your bottom six, your top six, and then every team in between. So basically in the order, because if you calculate it, if you do bottom six and top six, A, B, C, and D, we'll have 5 teams in each section. So we're still going to do it from 32 all the way to 1, and so that is how we will start. So let's go into the bottom 6, front and center here. And big mystery on who I'm going to pick for the last spot. I do think this team kind of just has to be there because I think they're still developing a lot of their players. I think in terms of Celebrini and Will Smith, they still need a lot of more support. There's going to be one other team I'm going to put right there next to them that I think maybe added a little bit more NHL veterans, and I just like what they added in net. So San Jose is going to be my 32 spot, and Chicago is going to be my 31 spot. I think both teams could surprise us easily. Where I'm at for those two teams is you're still a year or two away from like heavy playoff contention. And I kind of made the hot take last year. Like if Chicago figured it out in net earlier, like you never know. But I do think those two teams are like, sure, they could surprise us, maybe even squeak into a wild card conversation if kind of the stars align. But you look at where they're progressing, those two teams are going to be contenders for a long time once they figure it out. Right? Like I think San Jose's goaltending conversation is a conversation. Askarov, can he figure it out? I think he's going to. The skill level's there. It's just there's stuff off the ice and all those conversations. But I think Askarov's going to figure it out. After Chicago acquired Spencer Knight, what they're building with their defense group and what they have coming for their forward group, it's exciting times to kind of be a Sharks and Blackhawks fans because you see the vision of the future. So at 32 and 31 of the early power rankings, I think that's kind of a good spot to be at because we know they have time. Going to number 30. And this might surprise some people, but I just think in terms of what they did, like they're still a long ways away. And I think that I want to see a lot more from them. And it's the Philadelphia Flyers. They added Christian Dvorak, but in terms of like their goalie situation, there's nothing solidified there. The defense group, I love the Cam York extension. They were maybe going to trade Rasmus for Ristolainen, and Sanheim, I think, is one of the more underrated defensemen out there. But when you look at the overall picture of the NHL, Philadelphia, for me, doesn't scare me in that Metropolitan Division. I think there's a lot of teams in there that are like, okay, what are we going to do? Like in the Metropolitan Division, they're kind of in that in between, I guess is a better way to put it. And Pittsburgh's another one for me that's right there. I think you could argue that Philadelphia is actually maybe overall more balanced than Pittsburgh. But I go back to it. Philadelphia, unfortunately for them, they don't have a Sidney Crosby on their team, and Crosby keeps Pittsburgh relevant. They keep them in the conversation. But I just look at Pittsburgh as a whole, as their team. There's lack of direction there. Like I said, it's that in-between. But in terms of early power rankings, Pittsburgh really didn't advance in terms of building anything, and there's so much trade rumors around Carlson, Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell. So I'm going to have them in my bottom 6. And the other team that I'm going to have them in there, while they did a lot, I actually thought they were winners in terms of the free agency, and I think they could actually surprise us. But they did trade their number one goalie. I should say number one goalie with kind of like asterisks as well, because it's like Lucas Dostal. They got to re-sign him long term. I'm going to go Anaheim. We haven't seen it from them. I think it's like a wait and see with them if they can finally get over that hump. So I'm going to put Anaheim in my bottom 6. So you have 32 San Jose, 31 Chicago, 30 Philadelphia, 29 Pittsburgh, and 28 Anaheim to close out the bottom 6. And to me, this team, again, I like what they did. And I think there's a lot more to come for this team. But I can't put any expectation on them because they haven't proven it to us. And I still think they're going to make some trades. And Bowen Byram's not signed yet, the Buffalo Sabres. I like what they did, and I actually think one of these years they're gonna break out and go crazy. But how I see it right now is they didn't add a big top 6 forward piece. They're still relying on their young guys to really break out and carry the team. The goaltending is status quo, but we know that Luukkonen and Devin Levi can be a positive direction and a positive kind of future for them. And the defense group, I love what they added in terms of Doan and Kesselring. But if you look at their depth chart and forward group right now, like Doan's going to have it tough. It's going to be heavy competition at forward group, which is a good thing. But do they have the solidified like top 3, top 4 forwards that you just know are going to be the driving factor up top? Like I have some mock lineups in my head, and even something that I've put together is like Alex Tuch could find himself on the third line, even though he's probably, I would say, arguably the second best forward in terms of overall production and what he does to drive that team. Tage Thompson could be the number 1 guy. But again, if he's that number 1 guy, Team USA snubbing him, and he's just not really in that superstar category, like Buffalo just doesn't have that in the forward group. Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power, I would probably take those 2 defensemen over any other 2 defensemen on any other Atlantic Division team. That's probably their bright spot in what they're going to build around. That's kind of where I'm at for the Buffalo Sabres. Going into the next category, to me, I think the Nashville Predators, I had them as a playoff contender last year. I thought they were going to do something. When you look at their structure of their team, when you have Saros in net, you have one of the top 10 defensemen in the league in Roman Josi, and you have a deep forward group, they should have done way more. So there's got to be some finger pointing internally there. But I am going to go Nashville at kind of like the 26, 27 spot for me. I think actually Nashville and Buffalo could be interchangeable because they're in different stages, right? Nashville's got a lot of the veteran pieces, or Buffalo's got a lot of the up and coming. But Nashville's actually got a really underrated prospect pool, which honestly wanted to make me put them higher. But I think with their season standing last year, I have to put them a little lower. But to me, they could be interchangeable with these teams too. And I'm putting Seattle right here, and I am putting Columbus right here. I think Columbus could surprise us, and I actually don't think they should be a surprise, really. They kind of snuck up on us last year. So for me, in terms of the next 5, Nashville is right there because I think they could really turn it around. I want to see what their next, like, 1 or 2 moves are. I like some of the sneaky moves they made. Like, I like the addition of Perbix. They probably overpaid for Haig, but it really solidifies that top 4. To me, in my head, their top 4 going into next season is Josi, Shea, and then Haig and Perbix. That's their top 4, however you want to frame it. It's not that bad. There's a lot worse top 4s out there. Then Seattle, I still, like, again, it's a lack of direction. I actually might switch Seattle and Nashville's spots because I just don't know what Seattle's doing. I don't know their direction right now. So on the fly, I'll actually change that because I was high on Nashville last year. I think they are going to bounce back, but how I see it right now, they still need to make another move or 2 and see what they can do in that forward group. I wouldn't be surprised if Marchessault gets traded. After that, it really gets tough for me because I want to see some more competition in the Atlantic Division. I want to see it more balanced, but it's Detroit for me. They didn't improve their defense group enough. I think adding John Gibson for me is that bright spot. I really do think it is that bright spot because I look at their forward group. They've got some weapons. They've got Larkin, of course. Raymond and DeBrincat, I think, should have some big years. So, and then Patty Kane still feels confident enough that Detroit can do something. So I think with John Gibson in net, we've been waiting for John Gibson to get a change of scenery. I'm high on John Gibson. If he can stay healthy, he could be that missing piece for Detroit, and at least, like, he's seen a lot of bad defense groups in front of him recently with the Ducks. So what I'm getting at is Detroit, yeah, their defense group's not great, but it's a growing defense group. When you talk about Johansson, you talk about Edvinsson with Seider, they probably need to add one more piece in that defense group. I had said go after Ekblad, do everything you can, but there's other rumors out there. Could they target an Erik Karlsson? So I think Detroit, for me, there's still a lot to prove. I think the John Gibson one, for me, allows them not to be in that bottom category. We'll just put it that way. I think another team that I think really improved, I do need to see more from them, is Utah. But I have one other team below them, and that is the Calgary Flames. The Calgary Flames, for me, there's certain just big holes. One being obviously the left side of that defense group. And then the other one is a pure scorer. I think some of their producers, like a Matthew Coronado and Nazem Kadri, they can do that, but they don't have like a pure sniper. So I think Calgary, for me, they're kind of in that limbo as well. We'll see what they can do this year. But I do think they have the bright spots. Like Dustin Wolf and net, we just talked about what like maybe Saros and Gibson can do for Nashville and Detroit for this upcoming year. But I do think the Calgary Flames, for me, can be boosted up because of the goaltender. Never question how good or how much a goaltender can improve your team. So that's the 5 at D. At C, we're going to go Utah. We're going to go Montreal. We're going to go Boston. And let's stop there for a second. So the reason I have Boston in a respectable category is 2 reasons. There's 2 names here. David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy. If McAvoy's healthy, and then you look at all the other perimeter players around them, I think Boston could be back to a respectable point. Maybe I'll be surprised, but I just think Boston dropped so much last year because they were, one, surprised by the Marchand exit. Like, I think a lot of the players were, and they just weren't healthy. That was the big conversation too. So the health status, Jeremy Swayman playing nowhere near his capability, I think he's going to bounce back as well. So I think Boston's in for a bounce back. That's my early sense on the team. I think Utah greatly improved, and I think Montreal greatly improved. So I think putting those 3 teams in a C category, and if you work from the bottom, like I think I'm comfortable to say that those 3 teams could be in around the wild card conversation. When you look at San Jose, Chicago, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Anaheim, Buffalo, I just don't feel that. But you look at the next wave of teams, yeah, I could see those teams knocking on the door, where I think Utah, Montreal, and Boston could be in there. Like, Montreal squeaked into a wild card spot, and I think they're way better than they were last year. So that's kind of a factor in my logic. Past that, I think the Islanders. I think people forget sometimes that the Islanders have Ilya Sorokin, one of the best goalies in the league when he's at his best. To me, they still have a competent defense group, and they have a deep forward group. Like, I think Barzal and Horvat are going to have big years. I think the draft that they just had is going to help kind of keep improving their team and the morale in between. And if they can add guys into the lineup like a Callum Ritchie to start the season, I think the Islanders could be one of those surprise teams for me. So that's kind of where I'm at with the Isles. I think they're knocking on the door. But the fact that they had one of the best drafts, yeah, they didn't get hometown boy James Haggins, but I'm kind of feeling the Islanders as that surprise team. And I'm always very high on the top goalies around the league. So for me, Ilya Sorokin can be that for the Islanders. And to close out this 5, because I'm very questionable on where they are as a team overall, I'm going to go with the Vancouver Canucks. Elias Pettersson, I expect him to have a bounce back year. Demko potentially healthy. They did bring back Brock Besser. So to me, I do think the Canucks could be knocking on the door because they have the top talent, and they have, if not the best defenseman, one of the top 2 defensemen in the league in Quinn Hughes. And that's a huge factor as well. So I think for the Vancouver Canucks, I have them at that spot. So 32, 31, 30, San Jose, Chicago, Philly, those are probably my bottom teams, with Pittsburgh at 29, 28, Anaheim, 27, Buffalo, 26, Seattle, 25, Nashville, 24, Columbus, 23, Detroit, 22, Calgary, 21, Utah, 20, Montreal, 19, Boston, 18, Islanders, 17, Vancouver. On the fly, could we change any of this order? Maybe something like, maybe we'll change like this, maybe Utah around here. If this is the order, I could see that being maybe a little bit more of an accurate order, but I think these teams in this section make sense. Now, let's look at the top 16, the teams that would make the playoffs, right? I do think these teams can make the playoffs. This is just kind of power rankings from the start here. I am going to go St. Louis. I really like what they did in the offseason. I think they're just top to bottom. They're a very deep team. I think it really depends on if they trade Jordan Kyrou here. But I look at their defense group. I like what they did. They're solidified, obviously bringing Cam Fowler in last year and now Logan Mailloux. So for me, St. Louis might be a jump ahead of those other teams just in terms of experience. The goaltending conversation, I mean, if we're talking about all these teams, Sorokin's the best goalie of the bunch. But we'll see if Binnington has a big year. I just think the Blues are just a really mature team that's also bringing in a lot of youth as well. After St. Louis, I am going to go with the Ottawa Senators. I think they are very much improved. I think that they, of course, made the playoffs. To me, they didn't do a lot in the offseason to go, okay, wow, they're making a massive jump. They're very obviously reliant on guys like Brady Tkachuk and Tim Stützle. So we'll see if the Sens can replicate what they did last year. Of course, they are reliant on Allmark having a good year in net. But a guy like Jake Sanderson is going to keep improving in big ways. Right next to the Ottawa Senators, I think the New York Rangers are going to have a bounce back year. Let's push them up here. I think the Rangers are one of those teams that have one of the best goalies in the league. You shook up that defense group. I think defensively, they're a lot more solid. When you look at the offensive piece of Adam Fox and then building around the defensive players and guys like Gavrikov, who you just added, and Will Borgen. So the defense group, a little bit more of that defensive mindset. We'll see if Braden Schneider, though, can take that jump. I would really like to see Braden Schneider next to maybe a guy like Gavrikov, see if that can help him in the top 4. I do think the Rangers are a big bounce back potential here. I think with what they added in their forward group, Gabriel Perreault getting an opportunity, I think guys like Zibanejad, Panarin are going to have bounce back years, and then JT Miller in there as well for a full season. I think the Rangers are in for a bounce back. And the LA Kings, I honestly was close to putting the Kings lower on this list. The reason why I still have them here is they were in the playoffs last year. It's not like they lost a bunch. Ken Holland filled the gaps, I guess, but he definitely overpaid for players, like 100%. But in all of that conversation, I still like the depth players they added, and they added a good backup. So, like, for me, I can't have the Kings so much lower if they're right there and they had a great season. They looked one of the best teams in the NHL with one of the best player depths. So, I think the Kings have to be in that conversation. I just didn't like their offseason in terms of the cap spending, even though they did fill some holes. And then the other team I'll add here is the Minnesota Wild. I think the Wild, I liked the Tarasenko ad. I thought it was low risk. And they have a lot of young pieces coming in that I'm very intrigued to watch. It's just going to be, what is that Marco Rossi trade going to look like if he does in fact get traded? Or is there a road where they maybe keep him? And then to close out the top 11 into the top 6 as well. So next up after that, I have the Winnipeg Jets. I think losing Nikolai Ehlers is a huge hit. And once again, we were reminded that Connor Hellebuck has his struggles in the playoffs. So while I think they're a very good team still, they have one of the best pure scorers in the game in Kyle Connor, great defenseman in Josh Morrissey. I still think they have a really deep team, but losing Ehlers, they lost a guy like Appleton. They did lose some pieces. So it's going to be curious to see how Winnipeg does going into the season. I still think they're good enough to be a playoff team. And of course, being that top team in the regular season, like, I have to put that respect on their name because even with losing Ehlers, they still have a lot of pieces on that squad. Then beyond that, I'm going to the New Jersey Devils. The Devils, again, healthy Jack Hughes, and they could do a lot more in the playoffs. So I like what they've done in terms of the depth. A little bit of a change, adding a guy like Connor Brown into the mix as well. There's some Dougie Hamilton rumors. Let's see if they restructure the defense, but guys knocking on the door like Seamus Casey and then Simone Nemec. So I like what New Jersey's kind of bringing in as the youth aspect in the defense group, and they have a really good goalie tandem. So I'm going to have New Jersey up in that conversation. And then next up after that, I am going to go with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think losing Mitch Marner, of course, is a hit in terms of the regular season record. So as much as they're still going to be a playoff team in my eyes, and they should still be up there in the Atlantic Division in the top 3, they might take a hit in the regular season because of that loss with Mitch Marner. So it's a wait and see for them the rest of the offseason if Brad Treliving makes a big trade. But how I see it for Toronto is they're still going to be top 11, maybe top 15 in the regular season for overall standings, which should still have them in the playoffs. And then after that, I am going to go with the Washington Capitals. The Capitals didn't really lose anything. And I think when you look at the Caps overall, I like some of the younger players that are going to really add to that forward group. I look at a guy like Ryan Leonard. I expected in a full season he's going to look a lot better. And I just think the Caps are adding some youth around an aging Ovechkin. And Ovechkin is going to be hungry for the Caps to have a good season. So I think they have a good goaltender, they have a good defense group, and they have youth joining the veterans in that forward group. The Caps lost a guy like Mangiapane, but they brought back Beauvillier. I still expect them to make another move. They were aggressive at Ehlers. They didn't get him, so maybe they go for another big fish. But I have the Caps kind of in that conversation once again. And then to close out that 5 before the top 6, the next team I'm going to add is the Carolina Hurricanes. While they added Ehlers, I'm still kind of repeating what I said last year. I think they're a team that's going to be good in the regular season. They can be a team that wins a round or two in the playoffs, but They obviously don't have like an elite goalie. They don't have like an elite offensive talent on the back end. They have Slavin, who in my opinion is an overall top 10 defenseman in the National Hockey League. And again, they did add Ehlers, but is it enough in the overall picture? I just think the elite talent in the overall picture for these next 6 teams are just a little bit ahead of Carolina for what I think is going to come for this regular season. And to the next team, we're going to go the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think for the Lightning, they have Vasilevsky still, yes, an aging Vasilevsky, but it's Vasilevsky. The defense group, if they can stay healthy and get Loderberg out of that lineup, I like their top 4. And their forward group, they're going to have a healthy Oliver Bjorkstrand. They brought back Yanni Gourde. I think the signings of Pelche and Holmberg are very underrated, and Geeky's going to take another step. I think the Lightning are in a really good spot going into next season. And I think the fact that they just continue to stay in that conversation, to me, they lost against the champions. They lost against the Florida Panthers. So the Panthers make great teams look human and look normal. And I think that's kind of the conversation for how good the Lightning are. They still can get beat by the Florida Panthers. Next up, I'm going to go the Edmonton Oilers. I love the addition of Isaac Howard. I think, of course, they took some losses in terms of their depth, but Isaac Howard, Matt Savoy are going to be good pieces. And it's Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So as much as the Lightning, for me, are maybe a little bit more deep, and they have definitely the goaltending advantage. The Oilers just went to back-to-back Stanley Cup Finals, and I think in terms of their core structure, sure, they lost some pieces. As I said, Connor Brown, Victor Arvidsson, go down the list. Their core structure is still there. Their core top 6 is still there. Their core top 4 defenses are still there. They just need to add a goalie, and maybe they jump to top 2 on this list. Next up, I'm going to go the Dallas Stars. They lost some pieces, right? Like they lost Mikael Granlund. They definitely have had to be creative this offseason. But I think with Jake Ottinger in net, Miro Heiskanen now healthy going into next season, that's going to be a huge boost for them. So I think the Dallas Stars are right there in the top picture. And then my final 3. I think the Avalanche at number 3. I think the Golden Knights at number 2. And I think the Florida Panthers at number 1. So, to me, the reason I have it the way I have it, Vegas added Mitch Marner, one of the elite wingers in the game. Yeah, they lost Pietrangelo. Pietrangelo was getting older and slower anyways. That means just more responsibility from great defensemen in Shea Theodore and Noah Hannafin. If you're saying, oh, boo-hoo, my next 2 best defensemen are Shea Theodore and Noah Hannafin, you have a good problem on your hands. It's just going to give Korczak more of an opportunity. I think Vegas, if Adin Hill can be a top 15 goalie in this league, everything else is going to work out for them. And last year, they had one of the best center depths in the league. I mean, I cannot believe. Sometimes I remind myself, it's like Jack Eichel, and then you go to Thomas Hertl, William Karlsson, and Nick Waugh. Of course, Nick Waugh is now with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but they add Mitch Marner into the picture. I think the Golden Knights are going to have a great season, and with that in mind, Colorado not too far behind. I think they've had to get creative, and they move on from guys like Coyle and Wood. But I think Blackwood's going to have a great season, and I do think Colorado overall is still the dog type of team, and Gabriel Landeskog full season, Blackwood full season with the team. That's going to play a huge factor. Florida's back-to-back Cup champs, and they brought back Marchand, Ekblad, Bennett. It's as simple as that. No one should dispute them being number 1 on this list. I don't think anyone should dispute Vegas being number 2 on this list. They had a great regular season, and they got better. So, losing Pietrangelo sucks, but I just kind of explained the whole picture here. So, give me your thoughts, guys, on this full list for early power rankings. And, we'll see how that changes over the next month, because I'll be making a new one in August as more moves kind of happen. But these are like the way too early power rankings going into the 2025-2026 NHL season.